Welcome, friends. I'm so glad you're here today. Maybe you have been waiting for something, a dream, a promise, a breakthrough, and it feels like it's taking forever. You have prayed, you have believed, and yet nothing seems to move. You might even be wondering, did I hear God right? Did I miss my chance? Maybe it's too late. But I want to tell you something today. God is never late. He may not come when you expect him, but he's always right on time. When God makes a promise, delay does not mean denial. Let's go back to Genesis, to the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. He was 75 years old when he received that promise. But do you know when Isaac was finally born? When Abraham was 100. 25 years later. Think about that. A promise spoken in faith, but fulfilled through waiting, growing, and trusting. There were moments when Abraham probably looked at the stars, the same stars God told him to count, and said, Lord, you said my descendants would be as numerous as these, but I don't even have one. Maybe you have said something similar. God, you promised me healing, but the report hasn't changed. God, you promised me provision, but I'm still struggling. God, you promised me peace, but my mind still feels restless. Abraham and Sarah felt that too. Sarah even laughed when God told her she would have a child, not out of joy, but disbelief. But do you know what's amazing? Even her laughter didn't cancel God's promise. You may doubt, you may question, you may even feel like giving up, but God's fulfillment and faithfulness is greater than your weakness. See, what looks like a delay to us is often preparation in God's hands. While Abraham was waiting for Isaac, God was shaping his character, stretching his faith, preparing him to become not just a father, but the father of faith. The waiting season is not wasted. Sometimes God hides the promise so he can reveal your growth. He delays the answer so that when the blessing comes, you're ready to carry it. Maybe you've been waiting for years for a prayer to be answered. You're tempted to give up, to lower your expectations. But let me encourage you, don't lose heart. The promise still stands. You may not see it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not working. God is doing more behind the scenes than you can imagine. I like to say, while you're waiting, God is weaving. He's aligning people, opening doors, closing others, orchestrating divine appointments, all to bring His word to pass in your life. Ecclesiastes says He has made everything beautiful in its time. Not in your time, not in my time, in His time. God's calendar is different from ours. We live by deadlines. God moves by design. If He fulfilled every promise instantly, you wouldn't need faith. Faith is not just believing that God can do it, it's trusting that He'll do it at the right time. Sometimes God says yes, sometimes He says not yet, and sometimes I have something better. But every response is rooted in His love for you. When the promise feels delayed, that's where trust grows. Trust is believing God's word even when circumstances don't agree. Abraham learned this. After finally receiving Isaac, God asked him to offer his son as a sacrifice. Now, that doesn't make sense to human logic, but Abraham obeyed. trusting that somehow God would still keep his word. And what happened? God provided the ram. That's what trust looks like. It's saying, Lord, I don't understand, but I know you're good. It's walking forward when you can't see the whole path. Maybe right now you're standing in that same place, your Mount Moriah moment. You've done all you can. Now it's time to rest, to trust, and let God provide. Let me remind you today, if God made you a promise, it's still alive. Isaiah 55 says, His word will not return void. That means once it's spoken, it will accomplish what He sent it to do. Maybe the enemy is whispering, It's over. It's too late. You missed it. But I came to tell you it's not over until God says it's over. God has perfect timing. He's never early, never late, but always faithful. Sarah's womb looked dead, but God brought life. Joseph sat in a prison, but God lifted him to a palace. Moses spent 40 years in a desert, but God called him to deliver a nation. What do all these stories have in common? The promise looked delayed, but God's plan was still alive. So, what do you do while you wait? You keep walking, you keep praying, you keep sowing, and you keep believing. Faith is not passive, it's active trust. You say, Lord, I may not see it yet, but I know you're working. Maybe the answer hasn't shown up, but your heart can stay in peace. Because peace doesn't come when the promise arrives. Peace comes when you know who holds the promise. Keep your joy while you wait. Keep your worship alive. Remember, Sarah laughed in disbelief, but she also laughed again in joy. The same mouth that doubted was filled with laughter, and yours will be too. Friend, whatever you're waiting for, don't give up. Delay is not denial. God's silence is not his absence. He's still moving, still faithful, still in control. When the promise feels delayed, trust his timing. The same God who fulfilled his word to Abraham and Sarah will fulfill his word to you. You may not see it yet, but keep walking in faith. Because when it's God's time, everything changes in a moment. And you look back, smile, and say, Now I understand. He was right on time. Thanks for joining me today. If this message encouraged you, share it with someone who's waiting on God's promise. Remember, God's plans are good, His timing is perfect, and His promises never fail. Stay strong, keep believing, and I'll see you next time.